Egyptians believed the most significant thing you could do in your life was die. And the more important you were, the more complicated your death had to be. And when they died, they'd get turned into mummies of Scooby-Doo fame.
Greetings, ladies and lads, and welcome to the sands of Nehekara, where the dead rule the living. Yes, the old world is back, and so are we, with a speed painting guide covering all the basics for the entire Tomb King roster. Today, I will go over the best ways to get your army out of their canopic jars and onto the battlefield as quickly as possible, showing off multiple ways to paint the bones that make up most of these models, as well as going through the essentials that you need for a color scheme reflecting the might of this once proud people. We'll tackle the core infantry like swordsmen and archers, as well as some cavalry, and, of course, a Tomb King commanding our force. Now, the forces of Nehekara might be free from the constraints of time, but we for sure are not. So let's start with the preparations. The miniatures I'll be painting today are actually from an original Warhammer fantasy collection that one of my friends gave up on and sold to me. This stuff truly makes me nostalgic. And having to sift through all of this before we can establish ourselves on the battlefield makes this project all the more lore accurate. And, spoilers, there's some real gems buried in here. But that's for another time. Before we get to the priming, we should first prepare the base by covering it in the sands of Nehekara that I stole from a playground at 2 AM. To cover the entire thing in glue, I'm using a big synthetic brush with bristles made entirely from plastic to be able to wash the glue out afterwards. But any old brush that you've already written off anyways works as well. I'll leave the infantry without their shields for now, so we can paint them a lot easier. To prime those, I'd recommend you get your hands on some double-sided tape and a strip of cardboard. With this, we can just stick them on upright, with a good enough grip to not be knocked over by the spray later. And speaking of that, I'll split the minis into two different groups. One being primed in a pure white, the other in a dark khaki, as I want to demonstrate that you can get very similar results regardless of the angle of your approach and the paints that you have at home. The Tomb King himself gets primed in white, as I thought that this would just make the most sense for this color scheme. For the shields, we take the dark khaki again. Alright, all preparations have been done, so we can finally get to painting. Our first task is all about giving these minis a quick wash. Some get washed in a dark brown shade, and others with a medium yellow, leaving us with 4 different variations of the same miniature to start with. Again, I'm just doing this to hammer home the thought that there are many ways to paint these guys, with basically the same result no matter which combination of these paints and primers you'll use. After our minis are fully dry, we'll give them a quick overbrush with khaki, cleaning up any weird marks that the wash might have left on the surface, while leaving the darkness of the shades in the recesses. Finally, we highlight the minis with a quick dry brush of either an off or pure white, and we're already done with the skeletons for each and every Tomb King soldier you can imagine. I think I've never had any miniature or just any painting step in general be done as quickly as this. Because these guys are very plain and unassuming regarding the majority of their paintable surface, I'd advise you to be a little more extravagant on the few areas that we can give some color. For example, with a medium red on the bows and quivers of the archers. If your paints are not that opaque, don't go heavy on the paint loads and just wait for it to dry and give it a second light coat instead. Trust me, it can get quite out of hand otherwise. Next off, we take a dark blue to catch all of the belts and straps of these guys, as well as the details on the quivers, to set some accents there. To make clear that we're dealing with the remnants of a human civilization of incredible wealth, it's time we get our true metallic gold into the mix, and catch all of their little ornaments like headbands, bangles, the nooks of their bows, and the studs on their leather straps. The champion's color also gets painted in solid gold. Now it's time we get a little more into the details, as we take a light blue and paint the insides of the headbands and the bangles with it. Just go right over the studs and repaint them with gold later. It's way quicker than trying to navigate around those. I also decided to paint the archer's loincloth in this color, after which we turn our attention to the quivers of these guys again, picking out the stitches on the side with a mustard yellow, the shafts of the arrows with a pastel brown, and the feathers with a bright white. Some of these guys have what looks to be strips of fabric wrapped around their arms, which I think is a perfect opportunity to give them even more color. With the champion's dark brown sandals concluding everything there is to the archers, it's time we move to the melee infantry, taking a really nice orange bronze for their entire weaponry. I'm trying one of these angled flat brushes from Army Painter here, and I must say that they are awesome for painting these blades and spear shafts, so I can definitely recommend them. Continuing with the bronze, we paint the round armor plates that some of the infantrymen wear, as well as the huge trumpet the musician carries. Cool choice for someone without lungs, but let's not read too much into it, and rather switch to a bright silver on a really battered brush to sprinkle it down from the points of their blades to make them sparkle a bit more. Axes, armors and glaives get a similar treatment, after which we switch to a finer brush to give the trumpet some more love again. It is here we take a short break from the true metallic metals to pick up these flaps from the headbands with a dark blue. After that, we circle back to the headbands and other ornaments and paint them just how we did with the archers before. First a coat of gold, then some light blue in between the rims, followed by a quick touch-up in gold again. Next up, we take our brownish red again, and paint the pole of the banner as well as the shafts and handles of our weapons. For the banner and the icon itself, I firstly pray that you guys have better gold paint than me, because Citadel's options are really not that great as you can see here. Once we've gotten through that, we take a light beige for the cloth of the banner itself, and then heavily wash the whole thing in a dark brown. The one thing that is now left for us to complete is the shield of our foot soldier. I'm going with the classic color scheme of the dynasty of Cetra the Imperishable here, painting wet and wet to try and get a lighter hue in the center and a darker vignette on the edges. As we go through the shields, we can already think of the designs we want them to have later, and for that, I'm already leaving space for my accent color. There are just so many variations that we can achieve with that alone. The trims, studs, and other ornaments get picked out in gold again. Don't forget to do the backside as well, copying exactly what we did on the front, after which we pick out the open wood with a bright orange. Now we can finally give them back into the hands of our loyal soldiers, and as a little parting gift, we pick up our yellow wash from earlier again and give the shields a quick weathering to really sell their age. We're done with the finest infantryman the ancient world had to offer, but who was it whom they followed into death itself? There, now Tomb King of course, so let's quickly ready him up as well. Originally, I thought I'd go in the direction of the guy on the old codex I had, but GW likes to paint their dynasties in turquoise now, so I took some on my brush and gave the skin a quick wash with it. Fitting his social status, he's wearing a lot of gold, and fitting his living condition, he's wrapped in a lot of bandages. For his garment, I went with a knightly blue, but as this is a unique and unnamed character, you can paint everything on him however you want, without having to look for your army's color scheme necessarily. A quick intermission to paint his glaive in red and bronze, after which we finish strong, with our most beautiful colors, fine details, and a brown wash to tie it all together. Now all that's missing is the sand on the bases themselves, for which we take a bright yellow to make the skeletons themselves stand out enough, and the trim, which I want to handle the old-fashioned way, by painting it in a smooth, medium brown. The speed painting part of this video is now complete, and by the gosh, can I emphasize this speed in speed painting today. And as you can see, there is only barely a difference when we put all of the different bone paint jobs next to one another. You can get differing results if you're a little more reluctant with the overbrush after the wash. And if you're looking for a few neat tricks and ideas on how to get your skelly boys to really look the part, then keep watching, as I want to show you a few more, only slightly more advanced steps to take your army to the next level. Starting with the regular infantry, I think the wash did a great job weathering these models. But if you wanted to look a little more controlled and professional, just take a small amount of the previously used paints and reapply them on the upper parts of the shield. We leave a little bit of room between the transitions and other sculpted parts to increase the contrast. And don't worry if the paint looks a little rough here, as it actually helps the desired effect. If you want a little challenge, how about taking some white on a fine brush and painting some small hieroglyphs on these shields? I think there's a lot of funny business that you can have with that. And if you don't know how to get started, there are loads of reference pics on the internet. Even just the smallest additions can make a huge difference here. Another point of interest is the banner they're carrying with them. This is definitely a step to prove oneself, but a simple freehand of a scarab and some more hieroglyphs in red will show any opponent that you mean serious business on the table. What also helps is a little more color on the otherwise unassuming icon at the top. We really haven't got much to work with when it comes to the archers, but even here we can take their bows and put some hieroglyphs there. Looks quite cool, although I'm not sure if an entire unit wouldn't look too noisy with all of that. Lastly, we come to the Tomb King again. Here I'm taking a really bright gold to give all of the ornaments some highlights on the most reflective areas. The glaive is a special case, as I took a dark bronze and a light silver to try a mix between true and non-metallic metal action, but that didn't really work out too great. Well, back to the old reliables of highlights for the bandages, flesh, and garment. And to finish it off, I decided this guy to be particularly well conserved, with some last bloody remains inside of him. Oh man, am I glad to see some square formations again. You really don't know how much you miss something until you get to see it again. These Tomb Kings are a great start for newcomers to the hobby, as they really are the simplest army to paint in the entire roster, and I could really see myself having fun batch painting more of these guys in the future. I mean, I kinda have to with the amount still sitting on my shelf. As always, I'll have all of these specific paints that I use for this paint job down in the description of the video, and should you have any questions, maybe a couple of suggestions, be my guest and ask them in the comment section. In the next episode of this series, we'll be tackling the unit that sets the Tomb Kings apart from other kingdoms. Their chariots. Although the next video as a whole will probably be a wicked mini makeover. If any of that strikes your interest, feel free to hit that subscribe button. as I am really looking forward to seeing you again in my next video. Until then, take care.